Welcome to Revolutionary Motion, where we show you tennis from a different perspective. The main reason why you lose matches against players that seem much worse than you, where you feel like you should really beat that player no matter what, is tactics. And what I mean by that is your opponent has way better tactics than you because they're following the three basics of playing tennis. And those basics are a priority list, starting with priority number 1, putting the ball inside the court. If you're good enough that you can consistently put the ball inside the court, no matter how you manage to do so, you can advance to number 2, which is placement of your shots. However, the placement of your shots can only happen as long as you still fulfill priority number 1, which is to put the ball inside the court. So, if you notice that every single time you're trying to place the ball close to the sidelines, you start missing, you should not place it close to the sidelines, but place it more into the middle of the court, which again cancels out the placement, but at least you're not missing your shots. Once you're good enough to place the ball and keep it inside the court, you advance to priority number 3, which is power of your shots. So what you have to do is, you have to figure out how hard can you hit the ball without missing your shots and without losing placement. So as long as priority number 1 is met, you advance to priority number 2. As long as priority number 1 and 2 are met, you advance to number 3. You would never try to add a lot of power to your shots if you cannot place the ball or put it inside the court with a lot of power on a consistent basis. Now the tricky part here is, when do you really put enough balls inside the court to advance to number 2 or 3? And that really just depends on what happens in your matches. If you're playing a match and you are, winning the match, clearly your tactics work. But if you're losing the match, you have to ask yourself, am I hitting with a lot of power? Yes. Okay, maybe dial back the power and just go for placement and putting it inside the court. Maybe now you're not missing as much anymore, and that's good enough to beat your opponent. In some rare cases, however, your opponent will just be too good, and you need to add power in order to win points. In this case, your opponent is just a better player than you. However, if your opponent just goes for number 1, priority number 1, and just plays the ball inside the court, but you are trying to hit with power, now you have a problem if you're losing the match, because that means you are giving away the points. You are missing too many shots, and your opponent wins the match because of that, because you are trying to hit a winner instead of just keeping the ball inside the court first. Because most likely, you could play the ball inside the court more often than your opponent could if you're not trying to place the ball or hit it hard. So that means these kinds of opponents, they got those tactics down better than you. They are just sticking with what they're able to do, while you are trying to practice something new or trying to just hit hard shots because your ego takes over and you're too proud to hit the ball softer because you feel like you should be beating somebody like that with harder shots. So as long as you can dial back the pride and go back to the priority list one by one, starting with putting the ball in, going for the placement next, and then adding power if you're still not missing your shots, you will win against the opponents that seem worse than you.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you guys soon.